Jim, isn't it amazing when Michigan can keep this game to a 19-foot 9-inch game inside that three-point line? It's all theirs.
The 1989-1990 Loyola Marymount squad is one of the most memorable college basketball teams of its generation. A reality rooted in its run-and-gun style of play, as well as the tragic on-court death of its star, Hank Gathers. That turned the Lions into America's team in March 1990. Today, Jeff Fryer, the third leading scorer on that Lions team, a fearless shooter who jacked up an NCAA Tournament record 22 three-point attempts against Arkansas in 1989, joins the 19-9 podcast to discuss his 4-year career with the Lions, the unorthodox scheme concocted by Coach Paul Westhead, the emotions of Gathers' death, and the team's resilient run to the Elite Eight in the 1990 NCAA Tournament. Jeff, thanks for joining us here on the 19-9 podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. So, Jeff, so much ground to cover with you. I want to go way back, pre-Loyola Marymount, and I want to take us through your basketball origin story. So how did you first become involved with the game?
So when I was younger, I would play all sports, but I was really good at ball sports, including basketball. I believe God blessed me with good hand-eye coordination from an early age, and I was able to shoot the basketball pretty well early on, and I just worked at it. And I played with my brothers, and they were older than me, and I played with them and their friends. So whenever I'd take the ball inside, they'd usually rough me up a little bit. So I learned to shoot from outside, and that's part of the reason I became a good shooter as well. Yeah. But that was kind of my upbringing.
Gotcha. As older brothers are prone to do, mine included, they beat you up if you go inside. So you're kind of forced to be crafty or become a good shooter. That's certainly your case there. So you star at Corona Del Mar High. How did you end up at Loyola Marymount? How did that kind of come about? What was your recruitment process like?
So I was in my junior year. I had a good season, and I was being recruited by a few schools. I almost signed with a Division II school before my senior year because they had me convinced I couldn't play Division I basketball. I would sit on the bench. I wouldn't play that much. But I decided to forego that and try to have a good senior year, which I had a really good senior year. And then a lot of schools started recruiting me. So Paul Westhead came down to Corona Del Mar High School and walked around campus with me. And he has NBA championship ring on, and I was really impressed by that because he coached the Lakers to the NBA championship a bunch of years before. But he told me, Jeff, if you come to Loyola, I will give you the green light to shoot whenever you want. And I was like, yeah, right. But true enough, to his word, he was absolutely right. And when I got there, he gave me the green light.
You mentioned Coach Westhead, and he had that ring on. And so you're a Southern California guy, right? Kid. Yeah. And so you had to know who he was and what was it like having him that's that 1 degree of connection to Magic Johnson and Kareem, right? And so what was that like? Were you intimidated by him? Was it, were you in wonder of him and awe of him? I mean, and he had such a unique style too. It was a pretty unique personality, and we'll talk a bit more about him. But what was that recruitment like as a 17, 18-year-old having Paul Westhead talk to you?
Yeah, I was in awe of him. I was impressed. And, what better coaching resume than winning the NBA championship? And I was like, this coach is telling me I can shoot the ball every time I touch it. As a scorer shooter, that's what you want to hear. And it was just an incredible experience at Loyola. But Hank and Bo signed about 2 weeks after I did. I was his first recruit, and that's when it started rolling, the momentum.
It's interesting. So I want to get a sense. You talk about Hank and Bo, and we're going to come to them. But your freshman season, that is Coach Westhead's second at the helm of the Lions, and they had just broken a string of 10 consecutive losing seasons. So I want to get a sense, just what was the state of the Loyola Marymount program when you arrived there in 1986 in the fall?
Well, I think it wasn't really relevant as far as making headlines and making big runs in the NCAA tournament. They had made the NIT tournament that year before I got there, but but they weren't, really on the map, so to speak. But I think once we started signing a few guys, some transfers, then the excitement started to rise, and we figured we could have some good teams at that point.
And you mentioned Bo Kimball and Hank Gathers. They arrive on campus at the same time you do. They're transfers from USC. What were your first impressions of those two guys from Philadelphia?
They were absolute ballers. Hank was just they were both intense competitors. And, Hank was a relentless rebounder, scorer. Couldn't shoot outside of 10 feet very well, but he would definitely score anywhere inside 10 feet and get the ball off the boards. But Bo was more of a shooter scorer from outside, and he had tremendous moves. I'd never really seen a guy do that kind of thing, the kind of moves he would create in practice, and even in games he would do them too. But it was just a testament to Coach Westhead that gives so much freedom to play to our strengths, and he didn't really guide us for shooting the ball at any time. He actually got upset with me for not shooting. That was the only time he would really get upset.
Probably the only coach who ever got angry at you for not shooting, right?
Well, I'll tell you a little story. My freshman year, I got the starting job after a few games, and after about 3 minutes, he pulled me out of the game, and he walks down to the end of the bench, and he says, "Jeff, you know why I took you out of the game, right?" And I was like, maybe bad defense or something. And he's like, "No, you passed up a shot. If you ever pass up a shot again, I'm pulling you out." So I got the point, and that never really happened again. So off to the races.
Let's talk about Coach Paul Westhead's system. Describe it for people who aren't familiar with it, who haven't seen it. How do you kind of say this is what we were all about on the floor?
Well, we had a unique style where we pushed the ball, we pressed full court. We would give up We wouldn't give up layups intentionally, although they would get layups sometimes because we didn't want them to score, obviously. But that got them caught up in our style. We lured them into our style of play, which players would get their career highs and all that sort of great stats and all that. But they would be tired by the end of the game, and that's what our strategy was to make them tired. So we would keep pressing on until the end of the game and pull away in the last part of the game. But that was a testament to our preseason conditioning, and we prided ourselves on being the best shaped team in the country, and that's how we could run that kind of style.
And I think you bring up an interesting point. You kind of lure your teams into your style, and so the guys who are accustomed to scoring 8 points are scoring 20, and the guys who are accustomed to scoring 12 are scoring 25. But you're okay with that because ultimately you guys get the win, and it's easy to get caught up in that style, right?
It is, because it's hard not to, because we're pressing full court the whole game. You'll get layups sometimes, and they'll be taking bad shots and hurried shots, but they're not used to that style, but we are. So that was the intent of it, just to get them out of their comfort zone and playing our style.
How different was that than anything else you had done previously?
Well, actually, my high school coach was a defensive coach. We would speed it up a little bit, and take good shots, But he was a very intense defensive coach, which is a bit of a contrast from there to Loyola. But every other place I played, we didn't run that style, the Loyola style. So it was just a kind of a unique opportunity to play that. It was a lot of fun too. I played 10 years after college, and it wasn't the same after that. But
yeah, that's interesting. And you mentioned that it was a very physically demanding style too, in conditioning. So give us a sense of how you and your teammates got prepared for that. What was like the typical practice like, or what was preseason conditioning like? Can you take us into that a little bit?
So there's a sand dune hill in Manhattan Beach that we would run maybe once or twice a week, which it was about 100 yards long, and it was very, 45 degrees.
Very steep, yeah.
Very steep, yeah. So that really helped get our legs in shape and our stamina. And we'd also do a lot of long distance and sprint running as well the other days, and a lot of weightlifting. And so we really hit it hard, and we knew that we had to in order to run that style. And in practice during the season, we would not take it easy. All of our drills were full court drills for the most part, and just continuing to build our stamina and our conditioning so we would not get tired at the end of games.
And I'm curious if there was it was such a unique style of play. Was there also a change in mindset for you too? We talk about you had to change physically. What about the change mindset? Because you mentioned your high school coach was a defensive minded coach. You couldn't come up the score, cross half court and just jack up a three. Westhead wanted you to do that if you were open, right? And so what kind of shift in mindset did you have to play that style?
Well, everybody had to buy into the system. If there was one guy who wasn't bought in, then it wouldn't have worked. But we all respected Paul Westhead and bought into the system. But for me, actually in high school, I had the green light as well. He was a defensive coach, but I was one of our only scorers, and I had the green light to shoot in high school as well. So we didn't have a 3-point line in high school, but most of my shots were pretty far away. But so with that said, offensively, it didn't change that much for me, for my mindset, but defensively a little bit. We did play. People think we didn't play defense, but we played full court defense and tried to wear them down. So basketball people kind of know that we did play tough defense, but it's just full court.
And that's a really interesting point that, the defense is just a little bit different than the Bobby Knight half-court man-to-man defense. Right. You're playing a very aggressive style of defense. It's 94 feet, not half the court. And so, but there was some criticism against the Lions style of play because it was such an outlier in that time, in that era. And so people would say, this isn't really true basketball. How did you guys kind of react to that internally?
Well, we just tried to leave it out on the court, and let our record tell what we were all about. Because all the coaches in our conference, the Gonzaga coach, all the coaches that we played against in our conference really didn't like Coach Westhead very much because they were all slow down coaches, control the game, control the tempo. And Paul came in and changed the whole conference around in his 5 years there and made a big difference. They had to adjust and try to do things differently against us, and we were winning games, so of course they wouldn't be happy with them.
It's like preparing for the triple option in football. It's such an outlier that when you have 7 teams in your conference who play a more traditional style, and then there's this one outlier, I got to imagine that's hell to prepare for if you're at Gonzaga or University of San Francisco or Santa Clara.
Oh yeah.
So you have your freshman season. It's a sub 500 campaign, but then things really trend upward during your sophomore campaign for the program. That's when you get Kimball's and Bo Kimball and Hank Gathers. They're in the mix now. You yourself are pouring in almost 13 a game. That team runs the table in the West Coast Conference. It finishes 28-4. You guys lead the nation in scoring. You're getting 110 points a game. You get your first tournament win since 1961. I'm curious about how that season, your sophomore season, how did that set the stage for what was to come in the subsequent 2 seasons?
Well, some people thought that was our best team of that era. We did have a pretty strong team. We just ran into a tough North Carolina team in the tournament. But it did set the stage and gave us confidence for the future. And that if we could do that now, we can continue to do it with a lot of the same guys, a lot of the same players playing. So I think it just gave us a boost of confidence just in the coming years.
And so let's talk about that. You kind of move forward in your junior year, the 1988-1989 campaign. You guys get another conference title. You get a tournament appearance. And everything seemed to be setting up for a phenomenal year in 1989-1990, your senior year. That's also Bo and Hank's final year as well. So you guys are getting some preseason top 25 love. You give UNLV, the eventual champion that year. We'll talk about them later. You give them a solid game in the season opener. You guys take down ranked teams Oregon State, LaSalle on the road. You run through the West Coast Conference with a 13-1 record. As the regular season ends, how would you describe the energy of that team in 1990?
We were on a roll. We were strong. We had our fast break was clicking. We were scoring a lot of points. We were averaging 120 something points a game, which is about 13 or 14 more points than we had averaged the record-breaking year a couple years before. So we were clicking, we're on all cylinders, and guys were playing well. Guys were healthy for the most part. Of course Hank, but was not. But we were rolling, and we thought we could give it a shot in the NCAA tournament to make it all the way, because we had the firepower and we had the different style that gave us a chance to win, because our tallest guy was 6'7" pretty much, and playing against giants, it gave us a chance to win playing that style.
How much do you think the really unorthodox style of play, and again being an outlier, how much did that kind of feel empowering and inspiring and give you the confidence to think like, hey, we could really do some damage heading into the tournament?
Yeah, well, that's the key. We are in better shape, we thought, than any other team in the country. We ran the system that gave us a chance to win by our running style, which other teams were not used to, and that gave us an advantage. And anybody can win on any given night, and we thought we had a chance. If a team goes cold, they're not playing their style they're used to. They have maybe 2 days to prepare for us in the tournament, or maybe a few days. They find out who they're playing. They don't have time to prepare for us, so we thought we had a chance.
Cool. A day that I would imagine you remember pretty well. Sunday, March 4th, 1990. This is the West Coast Conference Tournament semifinals against Portland. And kind of preparing for this, I think about the song American Pie, and Don McLean calls the day Buddy Holly passed tragically in a car crash. He called that the day the music died. And I think for college basketball fans of a certain era, that day, March 4th, 1990, represents something a bit similar, as it's the day Hank Gathers dies on the court. So when you think about that day, where does your mind go? What moments from that day remain with you here 32 years later? Like, where were you when it happened, and just kind of how did you process things that day?
Well, he obviously went up for an alley-oop dunk and came back and collapsed on the court, but I was about 5 feet away from him. It was a tough time for us to process that. It was not easy for us, obviously. I just remember Hank's legacy and what an intense competitor he was and leader of our team. And I try to remember the good things. I'm a Christian. I believe that all people have a time and place when they're going to die, because everybody has to die at some point. His was dramatic way that he passed, and then it was his time. It was unfortunate that it happened like that, and that we had to go through it. And it was a roller coaster after that, as far as we would mourn his death, and we went to bury him and mourn his death. But the next week we were winning games, so it was a tough time in regards to mourning and winning games. Kind of a roller coaster of emotions. So, but we got through it, and I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to play with Hank and Bo and all the guys. We played as a team, even though everybody had their roles and everybody had the green light for the most part. We were a team, and we bonded together during that time, and still remain in contact and friends today.
How did I think when we're 22 years old, we feel very immortal, right? And we don't think about end of life. And so how did you kind of personally process things during that time? I mean, after all, Hank was a guy who you had spent countless hours with over the previous 4 years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at the time I was kind of lost. It sent me on a journey of faith, actually, because I didn't even think about God, and didn't know what happened when I died. And I started thinking about what happens when I die. Hank passed super quick, and what happens to me when I die. So it actually was good in the fact that I became a Christian about 10 years later because I was, on this road of what's life all about. And that gave me peace and joy in my heart and gave me purpose and hope and gave me a future. I don't have to worry about tomorrow. I don't have to worry about what's happening when I die because I know where I'm going. So in that regard, it was for the good. And so I'm thankful.
Well, there's that saying, from darkness comes light, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious about, you mentioned kind of this roller coaster of things. I think that after Hank's death, the West Coast Conference tournament is called off and you guys are declared the winner. There's some talk if you guys are going to play in the tournament or not. There's an on-campus memorial service. There's a funeral in Philadelphia. So you guys are kind of like all over the place, actually, from, the Southern California to Philadelphia. And I can only imagine where your emotions are. So how would you describe the state of the team at that time?
We were really down. We we had a team meeting a few days later, and during that team meeting, we had to decide. Paul Westhead told us, you guys got to decide what you want to do. You want to keep playing? He left it up to us, and Bo kind of led the meeting and let us take a vote, and we decided to play. I don't think it's good to give up in those situations. After looking back at it, it's good to keep going forward and pressing on and make the most of it. So that's what we did.
You talk about Bo leading that team. I'm curious about who in that meeting too, but also just amid this very emotional time, was there someone who really centered the team and gave it some perspective or focus and really held things together for you guys? Was that Bo or was that someone else?
No, it was probably Bo and Tom and a few of us. Bo and I were captains of the team, and along with Hank, and so we had those leadership capacity. So yeah, that's kind of all the guys kind of rallied, and it wasn't easy, but we made the most of it.
Did you see? I'm curious if you saw a shift in Bo after this, because these guys were high school buddies who went all the way from Philadelphia to the University of Southern Cal together. They made the transfer to Marymount together. Just as you were kind of observing Bo, this guy who you had been close with for 4 years, how did you kind of interpret how he was kind of processing things, and what did you maybe see change or shift in him?
Of course, he was sad, but he was strong. He kind of helped the other guys, get through it as well, and just had to become more mature pretty quick. That's kind of a big shocker, of course, and it made us grow up pretty quick and try to be the best we could be and moving forward, not knowing what was going to happen and not knowing what the next day was going to bring. So he was instrumental in that aspect.
So you guys, of course, do decide to play in the tournament. And on March 16th, you open the tournament as a number 11 seed against New Mexico State. You're playing in Long Beach, so not too far away from campus. After everything that had happened over the previous days, what did it feel like to get back on the court that day? That was 12 days after Hank's passing. Was it strange for you? Was it cathartic? Was it empowering? Was it sad? Was it a relief? Just what do you remember feeling that day in Long Beach?
Probably all of those things. We didn't know what to expect. We just thinking back, didn't know. We just wanted to come out and play our hardest and let the results be what they may. But it turned out pretty good that first game, and we ended up winning by 20, I think.
Yeah. Well, you guys really, you take it to New Mexico State, and that sets up a game against defending champion Michigan, and you guys down the Wolverines, right? In fact, you guys put 84 points on them in the second half. Let that settle in for a moment. 84 points. not against, some D3 school somewhere. This was the defending national champs. Now, a little bit different than the previous year, but that's still a talented squad. You're the one leading the charge. You hit a still standing NCAA record, 11 threes, and you finish off with 42 points in a 149-115 victory. What was that game like for you, Jeff?
Well, people often ask me about that game, and I just tell people I shot a lot. And I'm bound to make some eventually. No, but that game, Coach told us before the game, guys, bombs away. Shoot every time you get the ball. Don't worry about whether it's going in or not. Just bombs away. And so we took that. I took that and was like, yeah, okay, Coach. And then, I had a lot of open looks. Our guys were getting me the ball at the right place at the right time. In that type of offense, sometimes you get a lot of open looks because they're tired. They're not getting back on defense. And it leaves me open. And that's why Hank and I work so well together, because if I was shooting well, they would come out on me and leave him one-on-one with his guy. He could take it every time. And if they cheated off to guard him, it would leave me open. So during that game, obviously we didn't have Hank, but that's how I was able to score a lot of points during my career. So
it's worth noting as well, after that game, you guys are in the Sweet 16. There's an Arsenio Hall appearance after that game too, right? So what do I can't imagine you went to college at Loyola Marymount 3 or 4 times. You know what? I'm going to be on Arsenio Hall in a few years, right?
No, that was kind of interesting because Paul didn't want us to do that. And I think Bo kind of talked them into it, to letting us go be on the show.
I mean, Arsenio Hall is at the height of his powers here now, too. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's true. I was super nervous. I mean, I couldn't talk. Bo is a natural talker, and but it was fun. We got to be on there, and I think Coach didn't want us to go on because we weren't done playing yet, and he was thinking maybe after the tournament or something when it was over. But yeah.
Well, these days, you can get paid for that. So,
yep.
So let's talk about the Sweet 16. You guys match up against Alabama. Alabama on that team has Robert Horry, and they slow the game down, which I got to imagine you guys, this wasn't your first time you saw a team really come at you with a slow down, methodical approach. It works for the first half because it's a 22-21 game at the break. What was the turning point in that game that allowed you to pull out the win?
Well, yeah, teams would try to slow us down, but not like them. I mean, they would have 3-on-1 fast breaks and pull it out and not try to score, which was unimaginable. I never have thought a team would do something like that, because that's pretty much an easy basket. But when you said 22-20, that's amazing, because in my whole college career, I can't remember scoring that few points. But yeah, we tried to get it going in the second half, and they did slow it down, and they were effective. But we still won the game, and I think Robert already had a shot at the buzzer to tie it up, and it just careened off the rim. But yeah, that was a different type of game for sure.
Yeah. And so your story continues, and you guys are in the Elite Eight, and you have a rematch with UNLV. You open the season with them, but now you're back with them. And let's be honest, man, that Runnin' Rebels squad, that is a bad, bad squad. They got Larry Johnson, Stacey Augman, Greg Anthony, and they knock you guys out 103-73. They go on, win the NCAA title. Take us into that locker room after that game, and can you kind of bring us behind those walls and give us a sense of that environment? Because for you, this is the end of your college basketball career, and that's enough to be startling for people. But then when you consider what the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks had been like for you guys, it had to feel even weightier. So what was that locker room like?
Kind of sobering, I can't remember what it was like, but I just remember in my own mind, I was kind of sensing like, what now? What's going to happen now? Where am I going? What are my teammates going to do that are graduating? What happens next? It was kind of a question mark in my mind. And Was I going to play basketball? Was I going to? I mean, in my exit interview with Coach Westhead, he was like, Jeff, you don't have an NBA body. You should go back to your hometown and start doing business as a career. And I was like, what? No way, I'm playing. But 32 years later, I'm in my hometown and I have a basketball business with my academy. So I'm thankful. It worked out pretty well.
You had a nice postgraduate run, though, in basketball. And, sometimes getting paid for basketball, even if it's not the NBA, isn't the worst thing in the world,
Yeah, I had
It
fun.
can be exciting.
Yeah.
And it seems like that for you, that was a period of growth, though, too, personal growth.
It was for sure. I'm thankful for it. I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't want to change it. I played in Germany for the most of the time. I learned German. I speak it fluently now. Don't use it that much here because not many people speak it, but I did learn the language and broadened my horizons. Lived in a few different countries, and I was thankful for it. But you're right. It caused personal growth, and also it gave my life to Jesus, and that's the most important part.
In your heart of hearts, you guys ran up against a buzzsaw there in UNLV, but in your heart of hearts, where does that team go with Hank?
I think we had a chance. We were strong. I mean, we played UNLV. We were up on them that first game of the season in the preseason in IT, and we had a good chance to beat them. And things didn't go our way, but we thought we were getting better, and we were, during the season, and we had a good chance because that style gave us a chance. So, I think we would have done really well with him.
As you reflect on that season with the wisdom gained over the last 32 years, how do you put that season and that emotional journey into context? And what important memories stick with you? What did you learn about yourself from that?
Well, it was one of the most important times in my life and one of the most exciting times in my life. I don't probably something that I will. Well, obviously, I'll never forget it. Never forget it, but I don't. It's just hard to explain. But it caused me to know that to get through that and to get through, emotionally and spiritually and just that I can get through all sorts of things, it gave me perseverance and to do that. And thankful for that opportunity to play with Bo and Hank and the rest of the team. And those guys, they're teammates for a lifetime, and I'm thankful for them.
Now you're involved with the game today as a coach. Tell us what you're doing today with your basketball academy.
So after I played for 10 years professionally, and then I started coaching in high school and college, and then was an investment banker for 5 years. Figured out that wasn't my calling, so I took a step of faith. And 10 years ago, I started a youth basketball academy here in Newport Beach, Costa Mesa area, Huntington Beach, California, and we coach kids. So we have it's a club program. We have usually about 10 teams, and we also train kids and run a lot of camps. We just opened a facility, a half court, to train kids in Costa Mesa, California, and I'm thankful. It's my calling, I believe, and I like giving back to the youth what I learned along the way. All of our coaches, 7 coaches, play college basketball, and they have the same vision and desire, and they're good to the kids. And so I'm super thankful for where God has brought me to this point, and I'm just thankful, super thankful for the job He's given me, and for what the future holds with these kids, and just we also do outreach. We go to the Philippines every summer with our coaches and some families from our organization to do outreach and coach basketball because they love basketball in the Philippines. So it's on lockdown now, so we can't go. But we've been going for about 6 years, and that's really rewarding as well, fulfilling.
That's pretty cool. And so How does your experience with Loyola Marymount, that 4-year run there, Coach Westhead, how does it influence your coaching these days, and kind of what lessons or philosophies are part of what you're practicing as a coach today?
Yeah, good point. I had some really good coaches growing up. My club coach played at Stanford and was a really encouraging coach. My high school coach was a defensive coach and an encouraging guy. And Westhead was, wow, just a great motivator and positive. And so I was blessed with good coaches. So that's how I try to coach, and our coaches as well in our academy. And, I think some coaches coach by fear and some by love, and we take the love approach because in the long run, it works out best for both parties, and you earn their respect. And I mean, both are different, of course, in their own way. You get that fear-based coaching, but that's the way we coach, out of love, and we think that gets the best results.
I want to get a sense, if we could just end here talking a little bit about style. Now, you were a shooter, and you see the game today where shooting is so valued. Were you a little bit before your time, do you think? How would you function in today's game, Jeff?
They shoot a lot more threes these days. Well, for example, I think I might have been because, I was looking at some statistics and heard that when Larry Bird was playing in the NBA, they averaged about 6 or 7 threes per game as a team. Now it's over 30 per game. And so, it's a game of shooters and these days. And so, yeah, I think, thankful for Coach Westhead giving me the green light all those years. And, he was a master, he at his system, and never wavered from it, never changed it over his career, and stuck with it. And he was just a unique kind of guy that stayed with his invented style. I heard that he's friends with he was a really good NBA coach for a long time. But anyway, he said, that'll never work. And he's like, nope, I'm going to stay with it. And he did, and it worked out really good for him.
When you think of Coach Westhead, how would you describe him to people who don't know him? Like if they want a great Paul Westhead story to kind of illustrate who he is, where does your mind go there?
Yeah, he was just we respected him right away because of his, pedigree. Coached the Lakers to the NBA championship, of course. But he had our attention, when he was speaking in practice, he'd come up with these Shakespearean quotes because he was a Shakespeare scholar. He taught a class at Loyola, and we didn't understand what the heck he was saying, but we knew he was a very intelligent guy. He was a friendly guy, but when he wanted us to do something, he was a great motivator. And so that's what I'll remember about him. And we still go to lunch periodically every 6 months or so. And he's great. He's a very encouraging guy, and he's a high energy guy too. Even to today, he'd probably want to be out there coaching still, but yeah, he's great. Love him.
Does his if you guys had that style in today's college game, how do you think you'd fare?
The scores have been going down over the years because I think coaches want control, and they want to be able to. They don't want to get fired because guys are doing their own thing. I think it'd be if he got the right players for it, he could do some damage again. I mean, he could do some damage, that kind of style, because it's not there. It's not there right now. I mean, it was a unique experience for us. We had the right players for the right positions, and if a guy was to do that again, I think it could work.
Well, Jeff, you've been beyond generous with your time, and we so appreciate you joining us here on the 19.9 podcast to talk about one of the most memorable teams of its generation. Thanks so much, Jeff.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the 19.9 podcast. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do. And while you're at it, leave us a rating or review. 5 stars only, like the basketball camp. We also have links to all of 19.9 social media so you never miss a release. Until next time,